Good evening, night travelers, and welcome back to Midnight Frequency Radio, where the signals cut through the noise and the unknown is never off limits. I'm your host, Carl Richardson, coming to you from the Ozark foothills of northeast Arkansas, a place where the night feels just a little deeper and the silence sometimes feels like it's listening back. Now, before we begin tonight's program, there's a story developing that's been sending shockwaves through the UFO research community. Over the past several days, newly released disclosure files and government documents have once again reignited questions about what officials may have known for decades regarding unidentified aerial phenomenon, recovered materials, and encounters the public was never meant to fully understand. Researchers are poring over the documents tonight. Some claim the files contain overlooked references to non-human intelligence, unusual biological descriptions, and reports from military witnesses whose testimonies were buried for years behind classifications and redactions. And while skeptics continue to demand harder proof, others are asking very different questions. If even a fraction of these reports are true, then how long has the truth really been sitting just beneath the surface? Because tonight's guest represents one of the most controversial and unsettling cases ever to emerge from the shadows of UFO history. The case involving an encounter in the wilderness, a creature not of this world, an event captured, at least in part, on video. Our guest, Dr. Jonathan Reed, has a story that doesn't just challenge what we think we know, it tears right through it. But that's only the beginning, because what followed may be even more disturbing. Found artifacts, strange technologies, and a body of an extraterrestrial being that may not have vanished into myth at all. Tonight, we ask the questions others won't. We examine the evidence. We confront the gaps, the contradictions, and the possibilities. So dim the lights, turn up your volume, and keep your eyes on the shadows. Because once you step into this story, you may never look at the woods the same again. We'll get into it right after this. Looking for a portable radio that has slipped into your pocket? Take a look at the CC Pocket AM/FM Nowhere Weather Radio plus alert with clock and sleep timer. We combine ease of use, very good reception, and sharp, well-defined audio together in this little jewel of a radio. You can listen on the built-in speaker or the included high-quality original CC Bud earphones tuned for superior voice quality and music. It has 5 one-touch memories, R-type buttons for each band, and stands upright when needed. To get your CC Pocket Radio, you can call 1-800-522-8863 or visit us on the web at ccrane.com. Once again, that's ccrane.com.
From the Ozark foothills of northeast Arkansas, here is Carl Richardson on Midnight Frequency Radio.
Here I am indeed, and I have with me guest Dr. Jonathan Reed and Dr. J from Dr. J Radio. Good evening.
Hello, and thank you for having us.
Welcome. Thank you. Thank you both for inviting me with you.
I guess we'll get right to the questions since some of the listeners may not be familiar with the case. Dr. Reed, can you take us back to the day that the incident happened? Where were you, and what led you into the woods?
Sure. I'll briefly give you a recap. In October 15th of 1996, I lived in Seattle, Washington, worked at basically a large medical facility adjacent to the University of Washington called University of Washington Medical Center. I was a developmental psychiatrics physician, working exclusively with kids, and a job that I loved. I had gone to several different universities, graduating with several different degrees, and I'm essentially in 1996, having worked for over 15 years. I loved my job. I had the American dream as far as I was concerned, and everything seemed to be good in my life. Well, on this day, I took my dog, Susie, a golden retriever, who was literally my companion night and day. She loved to interact with other people. I took her to work with me. She loved patients. Uh, on this day, we got in my Jeep in mid morning and headed to the mountains where we had been before, where there was a logging trail, an old woods logging trail that had overgrown, but provided a great place to let your dog off the leash and run and have fun. And being that this was early October, it was still warm in the sunshine, and the leaves were turning to golden. And so we were out walking in a place that we had been to many times before, seeing deer and raccoons and squirrels and wildlife that saturated this area. This was in the upper part of the Cascade Mountains near Snoqualmie Pass. So it was frequented by many people, but at this time of the year, less people. So it may have been one of the last times we could go before the snow. In this area, it snows between 8 to 10 feet each year, which makes this inaccessible for about 3 to 4 months. So we enjoyed being there. We enjoyed running off the leash, letting Susie be in the natural state, being just a crazy dog as she was. She'd love to run and bark and play and run back, and very obedient, very gentle animal, well trained, and just a delight to have. Anyway, on this day, we parked my Jeep, got out, started walking, and walked for about an hour to the location where she took off running, which wasn't uncommon, and started barking and chasing something. I didn't know what. I couldn't see her. There's a lot of underbrush, a lot of hills and valleys, but this wasn't unusual. And she'd come running back happily after treeing whatever she was running after, whatever it could be. But on this occasion, her barking started to change. And if you know your dog's voice and you're accustomed to them, you understand the difference between playful barking and aggressive sounding barking. And this started to sound aggressive, like she was in a conflict, possibly with a wildcat or a small bear, which frequent this area all the time. So I quickly tried to locate her, called her name several times. She didn't come, which was very unusual. I set my day pack down on the ground and picked up a broken tree branch, which was about 5 feet long and about the size of a large baseball bat. And I did that because I thought I might have to untangle her if she was in amongst some other wild creature, just to separate her from this situation. But again, I still couldn't see her yet because the underbrush, and I kept calling her name and hearing her barking, which at this point became very, very aware that she was in some kind of trouble, which was unusual because she normally wouldn't be aggressive at all. But I could hear her starting to yelp as if she was caught in a situation she couldn't get out of. So I ran for the sound. I ran toward the sound. trying to figure out where she was. And I ran up this hill and I jumped down through the underbrush. And as I did this, I landed within, I would say, 4 to 5 feet, confronted with this creature, this small, it was dark because of the overhead canopy, and this was mid-afternoon. I couldn't clearly see what it was because it was moving so fast. It was a blur. It was moving like a paint shaker, shaking back and forth. And then I realized what I was looking at is this creature was throwing my dog over its head, back and forth, numerous times, so fast that I could not clearly see it other than this blur. I ran forward. As I ran forward, this thing started to kill my dog, tearing at her throat and her head, literally ripping it apart. It was a terrible, terrible thing to see. I went into a rage. I grabbed the branch that I had in my hand and I swung it as hard as I could, trying to stop this action. And I hit the creature in the head, in the back, the side of its head, splitting its head open, knocking it to the ground. Instantly, the scene totally came to a stop. There was no sound. There was no sound of the air or any of the things that happened in the forest normally. And I fell to the ground too, not 3 feet next to this creature that was bleeding profusely on the ground. I was sick. I was violently sick at this moment, as if something had hit me at the same exact moment. But I had no bowel control. I had no bladder control. I was throwing up. I was gasping for air. And I couldn't understand why this was happening. I could barely move off the ground. I was on my stomach on the ground, unable to get up. My muscle tone was gone. And I didn't know what was happening. I was afraid. I was afraid that I was going to die because of this feeling. So this is how it first started. This is how this event first started. And in the reality of it, I sat there for a long time before I could even get up. And I thought something had impacted me as well, because it felt like almost like radiation sickness, if anybody knows what that is, but profoundly nauseated and uncontrolling of any muscle control or the reality of being just out of sorts to an extreme. That's what I initially went through.
So the physical effects were caused by an external force, more or less.
Well,
Like
and at the time, Carl, I didn't know what that was because this happened so quickly. I mean, from the time that I first saw my dog in conflict with this creature until it was on the ground, what I assumed dead, was within 10 to 12 seconds. So it all happened extremely fast. And then when this wave came over me that knocked me down too, again, I had no idea what was happening. My reality was gone. And at this moment, I was just in peril, thinking that I wasn't going to survive.
when you finally regained your composure, and I'm sure that took a while from, if I witnessed one of my pets experience a death like that and then encountered the being, I'd probably be in a sheer panic.
Well, I'm sure that's what happened. I'm sure I somewhat went into shock. And the only thing I could think of was stopping the action. Now, this was not premeditated. I didn't think, oh, I'm going to knock something apart or kill something. I'm basically not a violent person, but this action that I witnessed made me feel like I had to try to do something. So I, in some respects, people say, "Oh, well, how could you do this?" Thinking it was a sentient being. Well, I didn't think it was a sentient being. At the moment, I thought it was an animal. I thought it was a terribly crazed animal that just ripped my dog apart. And my dog fell to the ground not as a normal solid, but as an ash, as a white powdery ash, like something out of your fireplace. I mean, all of this made no sense to me. It had thrown my life, my paradigm out the window. None of what I preconceived, and Dr. J, you can add in here, the reality was gone. My reality was totally gone. So I didn't know what to think. Dr. J?
When you actually touched Freddie with the log or the branch, I'm assuming that probably some of the physical effects that you felt, the nausea and all that stuff, was probably telepathic communication. Would you agree with that?
Well, that's a possibility. I mean, that's something that years later, I've had a chance to think through with other people. And that is a possibility, but it's also a possibility that there was another factor going on in this arena, in this area. And after I had some time to come to some sense of where I could sit up, where I could slow my breathing down, I realized there was something else in this area making a sound, making a low harmonic tone throughout the forest. And it's the only other sound I could hear. And I stood up and would fall down, and I would crawl along the ground, seeing if I could see something, hoping that it was another hiker, hoping that somebody else was there who could help me. And there was no one else. But what I saw through the underbrush, through the trees, was this black object, which I call the obelisk. It was a black wedge shape, about 12 feet long, 3 feet wide, and 2 feet high. And the thing about it, it was making this harmonic tone. And it was so loud that it felt like it was almost inside of you, like it was almost touching your backbone. It was so.
Don't forget the detail, of course, that it wasn't touching the ground either. This thing was a couple feet off the ground, correct?
That's right. When I finally was able to walk toward it, I slipped my footing and kind of fell partway against it. And then I realized that it was, in fact, 3 feet off the ground. It wasn't floating, it wasn't moving, but it was definitely suspended off of the ground. No landing gear, no wheels, no pod, no nothing. It was just anchored to the air. It was making this noise, this tone. And when I touched it, the tone changed from this kind of a dark sound to a lighter tone, like it was responsive to me. And I almost felt like it absorbed me for a second and then threw me back out. That, I don't know if it really happened or not, but that's what I felt like. But again, I was still sick. I was sick for days because of what this did to me. All I can say is it was traumatic. It was extremely traumatic, not only because none of this made any sense to me in reality, but also the trauma that was inflicted on me seeing my dog killed, like Carl suggested. Well, this is like a member of your family being torn apart in front of you.
And not just that, for everybody listening to this podcast right now, remember, this is all on video. You can actually hear Dr. Reed, struggling for air, clearly in distress and suffering I mean, it's all there. You could see Freddie on the ground. You could see the craft off the ground. So I just want to throw that out there. If anyone's trying to visualize in their head after this interview's over, you'll have a chance to see it.
Yeah, there's
And
video available on YouTube still. So
let
You
me
could
just
go to my
say,
interview. Check. So the video start. I start playing all the video, but yeah, it is available all over the internet.
people ask me, they said, well, how did you come to the reality of being calm enough to take pictures or take a video? Well, it was a matter of circumstance. I was laying on the ground. I needed to get some water to try to drink, to try to calm down. The water was in my day pack, my backpack. So I crawled back to where I had taken that off, 10 or 12 feet beyond where I was laying on the ground, opened the pack, took out my cameras to get to my water, drank the water, sat there for 20 or 30 minutes trying to calm down, trying to console my mind in what all had happened, which, like I said, there was no reality to it. I couldn't find anything that made any sense. And my mind was just spinning. And as I started to calm down, I realized, oh, my cameras, because I had just reached in, taken them out to get to the water, and I had my camera in my hand. And I thought, well, I could take a picture of this body on the ground. I could take a picture of this because, and my mind started to spin out of control, thinking, well, maybe it's not even here. Maybe none of this is real. So I'll take a picture and maybe nothing will come out. I don't know. Now, this was in the day prior to digital photography. This was film photography. I had a 35 millimeter film camera with negative film and positive film. I had a small, one of the very first small camcorders that was non-digital. And I thought, well, I can take a picture of this. And in seeing this black floating shape, again, which defied everything I knew about reality and circumstance, I thought, okay, well, I'll try to take a picture of this. And chances are it won't be there because maybe my mind is just out of control. Maybe none of this is real. So I took my camcorder out. I took some film of it, of the body laying on the ground, of the forest, of this black shape actually hovering 3 feet off the ground. And there was distortion in the video. The closer I would get to this black shape, the more the camcorder would distort. So I moved back further so there was less distortion. This camcorder had a viewfinder about a quarter of an inch square in black and white. So I was literally holding the camera, pointing it in the right direction, hoping I would get it. Because again, I was so sick, I was throwing up, I was gasping for breath. I didn't know what was going on. I would fall over. This was not a gentle circumstance. And I was hoping that something would come out. And later I found out that it did. It did come out. This is the video that I took, which is available for people to see. It's out there. I've never charged anything for this. I've never tried to, make it commercial. I think it's something everybody needs to know. Everybody needs to see that this kind of thing really does happen, that it wasn't an illusion. And I know there's a lot of people out there that have made statements about my case, about my circumstances, who have tried to say, oh, it's all a hoax, that this man isn't a doctor, that he never went to medical school, that all of the circumstances were lies and fabrications. Well, let me tell you, before any of this happened, there was no negativity about my life, about what I had done. about graduating from San Diego State, UCLA, and the University of Washington. I had good scholastic merits. I had graduated with basically a 3.8 average, and people had gone to my graduation ceremony. I have interviewed counselors and professors who taught me at these different schools. I have that information and that documentation because people started to denounce my life. They started to spread these rumors. And the only reason I could figure that out was because when I first came out and went public, I showed everybody what I had. I posted it everywhere I could. And I mean, this is hard physical evidence, both clear photographs, not dark, not fuzzy, not lights in the sky. This is the body in front of you.
Well, these photographs and stuff have also been analyzed by Kodak, that they haven't been altered in any way. Is that the case also?
Yes,
Thank you for
that
bringing
is
that
the
up,
case.
Carl. I was going to jump that in. So yeah, I'll let you guys talk about that because that's such an important point while you're on the 35 millimeters
Well, when I
and the
first
digital and the video as well, the
when
16 millimeter.
and when I first went public, I didn't know what to do, how to do it, and I had a guy who was an author and a writer help me document this case, how to put it together, how to actually tell people about this story because it was so complex and I was not a writer. So I needed help. So this man, Robert Wraith, came up from California and got an apartment and lived in Seattle where I was able to come back and live with him and he could extract this information from me. The book that we ended up writing called Link, an Extraterrestrial Odyssey is still available on Amazon Kindle. People can still get it. It's a step-by-step walk through my shoes and what I experienced in the order that I experienced it in. It, in some ways, is the best example of how stressed and how distracted I was, and how people tried to say none of this was real and that none of it actually happened. Well, there was an active force of government agents trying to destroy my life, my credibility, actually destroyed my career uh, to the point where I can't get licensed, I can't get refacilitated in a hospital. Uh, they've destroyed my credibility and my ability to work. I mean, they couldn't destroy the evidence, but they could destroy my credibility, and that's
Well,
all they could do.
the government's operandi is seems to follow that anyway. Look at Bob Lazar and Betty and Barney Hill.
Absolutely. I mean, this is nothing new, but the extreme that they went to. If people try to find my name out there in the internet, the first thing that comes up is all this negative BS that has
Let me
been.
say something about that. Obviously, there's some that is concerted effort to debunk you, but there's also people that just don't pay attention to the evidence. I'll give you an example. The first time I heard about this case was through UFO Magazine in the late 90s, and even they had it wrong. They mentioned that the alien was shot and killed. Okay, people don't look at the evidence and they just assume that they know about the case, and because they read that it's crap, that's what they jump on. But they don't. This is the probably the most overlooked case that has the most amount of evidence than any other case that, as a lawyer, I'm a trained lawyer, that I would take to a court any day over any other case.
Well, as you know, John, and you've done a substantial amount of research into me and my background and the case, uh, I tried to do everything that I could do to show people exactly what happened and what I went through. If people choose not to believe it, if they choose to believe that it's only a hoax, that's up to them. But if you open your mind a little bit further and see what actually has yielded from all of the evidence, it's an amazing amount of evidence. I even took 2 lie detectors, 2 polygraph examinations, which I passed both of at at law enforcement people who administered the test. This was things that were done above and beyond my own personality, my own circumstances. The area was tested. The forest area was tested for bark and dirt and samples from the arena where this took place. They found exclusive amounts of a radiation that is never there naturally. There's certain kind of radiation that was permeated into this area. These tests were done by forensic examination, where I didn't have any control of the outcome. After going on Art Bell several times, Art Bell radio, and giving interviews about what had happened and what substantiated, finally there was the availability of graphics on the internet where I could post a lot of my photographs, a lot of the video. So I got it out as far as I could. Because of that, I was invited by several other people, including a journalist in Mexico, Jaime Maussan, who basically wanted to interview me on television and brought me to Mexico and put me and my team on television, did an interview that was international, that aired initially 11 times in 26 countries. It was both in English and in Spanish. They took the evidence that they could, extracted it and verified it, that it was legitimate, that nothing had been misplaced or mishandled or misrepresented. You can only say this so many times where people either want to understand what I went through or they choose not to listen. And that's totally up to each individual. I always say one thing. If I had not have personally witnessed and experienced what I did with this creature and what took place in the aftermath, I wouldn't believe it either, because it's so bizarre. It's so unbelievable. I understand when people have difficulty believing it, because for a long time, I didn't want to believe it either. I actually kept telling myself, this just could not have happened this way, but it did. And what happened afterwards was ongoing. What I haven't said is, after what I thought killing this creature, and I say his head was split open with a 2-inch hole all the way down to his brain, where it broke the skin, the sinew, and the bone, exposing his inner cranial material. I thought he was dead. And I took that body, wrapped it up, and was going to hide it somewhere where I could later bring back somebody else, someone and other people to help me to deal with this, to understand it. But I couldn't find a place to put it. So I just wrapped it up in a thermal blanket that I had, an emergency thermal blanket, because I didn't want to touch it. It was a mess. It was covered in blood. I just didn't want to touch it. So I put the thermal blanket around it and wrapped it up like you would roll up a sleeping bag, tied my straps from my pack around it, and started to carry it back toward where my Jeep was parked.
One minor detail you forgot about, John. You grabbed something that was with the body that you brought, and I'm assuming was in your backpack on the way to the car, right? Can you talk
Well,
about that?
laying next to the body was a silver cup, like about the size of a big Coca-Cola can. And it looked bent. It had an angle to it. It was silver. And when I saw it under the brush right next to the body, I actually first thought that it was, I know in some respects it doesn't make sense, but my mind said, oh, it's silver, it's bent. Uh, and it reminded me of a Coca-Cola can. But I picked it up and it wasn't. It was some other piece of metal that had symbols on it. There were some black raised symbols across it, and that made no sense to me, but I just put it in with the body as I rolled it up, and I thought, okay, I'll bring that back. I'll bring that back to where it can be stored. And I kept looking for a place to put this bundle.
I have a picture of I believe you call it a link device.
Yes.
I have
yes,
it on
the link artifact.
I have a
And-
picture of that up on the live stream so viewers can view it
And
also.
for people, I mean, this story is ongoing. After I came home, after I drove up into my carport, I realized my dog was not there where she always was sitting next to me. And in the rearview mirror, I could see the thermal blanket where I had lifted this thing into the back of the Jeep and closed the door. And now I was home and I was thinking, what am I going to do with this body? It's dead. It's going to start decomposing. And I thought, I don't want to bury it. I don't want it in my house. I don't, I thought, okay, I'll open my garage. I opened the garage and there was my freezer, a small chest freezer. And I thought, okay, it's dead meat. If I freeze it, it'll stop decomposing. So what I did is I lifted the basket that had some frozen food in it, lifted that out, and just set the entire wrapped body into the freezer and closed the door and went in the house. I didn't want to deal with it. I didn't want to think about it. It was insanity to me. And I was so sick and so messed up at the time. I just wanted to go and I stood in the shower with all my clothes on because I was a mess. I was just covered in sickness. And so I stood in the shower for I don't know how long and just peeled off the layer to my clothes and cleaned up the best I could. And nobody was there. I was alone. I made some phone calls. I called my girlfriend. She wasn't home. I called my best friend, Gary. I said he wasn't home either. This was in the day and age of answering machines. This was prior to cell phones, folks, 1996. So I left messages. I said, call me. My dog Susie is dead. I need your help. Come over. Please help me. I'm really sick. And that's how it started. That's how this all started. My friend Gary came over. We talked. Of course, he didn't believe the story, but I had the videotape and I took it out of the camera and played it into my television. And there it was, clear as day. The black craft, the woods, the body laying on the ground with blood. It was all there to see. Unbelievable as it was, there it was. And he still felt I was spinning out of control. My mind was just going crazy. And I finally said, come with me. Come with me to my garage. And I said, you'll see. And he walked behind me to my garage. I opened the freezer, took out the body, laid it on the floor of the garage at that time, and showed him what this was. And he was just uncontrollably dazed as if he'd seen a ghost. His attitude changed. He kept saying, oh my God, what is this? What have you done? What have you found? And I said, this is what happened. This is all I can say. I don't know what it is. I don't know what happened. And he started to say he thought he knew what this was. And I said, I don't want to think about that. I don't want it closer to me in my mind. And he said, well, this has got to be some kind of alien, you know? And I said, I don't want to think about that. I don't want to know that. But he was sure. And he said he'd read about these kind of things. And for the next few days, that's what we did. We talked about, what do we do? Who do we talk to? Who do we confide in? Who can we take this body to? I mean, I thought about taking it to the university in the biology department and letting them dissect it. I thought of all of these things. And within the next 72 hours, we started the process of finding out who to talk to and who we could confide in and who would understand these circumstances. And it was a living nightmare to try to deal with this.
At some point, the creature you found out wasn't actually deceased.
I had been taking the body out of the freezer, unwrapping it and showing it to colleagues, to my family members. I had done this many, many times. And on the third day, I had made arrangements to have another professor come and look at what I had found. Somebody I knew well, somebody who had known me for years in the hospital, somebody I trusted, because I needed help. I didn't understand any of this. And I wanted other people's opinion. I figured if I could bring other people into this, they could help me find some reality to this nightmare. So he had called earlier, said he'd be over at a certain time. I went out to the garage, set up a table, a portable table to lay the body on with a big light over it. And all of a sudden he called and canceled. He said, Jonathan, I cannot be there. I don't know that you should be doing this. Maybe this is going to, disrupt your life, but I don't want it to disrupt mine. He was angry on the phone. And this made no sense to me. Why would he be doing this? This was not like him to do this. So after the phone call, I went out to the garage, put away the table and the light. And as I was doing that, I heard this sound in the garage, this scratching or rubbing sound. And I thought, could rats have gotten in my garage? This was an older freezer. Was the compressor going out on the freezer? I didn't know. So the only way I could identify that is I thought, well, there's a thermometer right inside the door as you open the top of the freezer. And if the temperature is rising, then I know the compressor is going out. That's probably the sound I'm hearing. So I raised the lid, and as I raised the lid, this creature sat up out of the middle of the thermal blanket with his head right in front of me, screaming so loud that it pushed me back. It actually physically forced me back in the garage to the wall. And this terrible, terrible dynamic scream and self-defense, yes, I'm sure. Anger, yes, I'm sure. And the only thing I thought of is it's going to kill me next. That'll be the next thing. It's going to jump out of here and attack me. So I ran into my house. My garage was separated by a yard. I ran through the yard, ran into my house, slammed the door, and just panting, just being scared to death that this thing was going to come and kill me. Because I tried to kill it. I thought it was dead. And now it's not dead. Now it's just angry and screaming. This was insanity to me. I called my friend Gary. I said, we have a bigger problem. And he came over, and I took him out, and I went into the garage timidly, because hoping that maybe this thing had run away. And no, it was in the freezer. The lid was closed. And I opened the freezer with a broom handle. And as I did, it sat up and started screaming at both of us, again, pinning us almost physically to the wall inside the garage. We ran out of there. We didn't close the freezer. I didn't close the door to the garage. Ran in the house, slammed the door, and sat there in my kitchen for a long time without saying anything, looking at each other like both of us were out of our minds. But nevertheless, this really happened. This happened exactly like that. And
Well,
so we sat. Go ahead, Carl.
I have a copy of the recording. But
You do?
I need to go into a break, and as soon as we come back, I will play that, and you can give your thoughts.
That's fine. That's fine. Like I said, it was a nightmare from hell.
It was definitely that, and I'd be like you. I'd just be totally sick. We'll take the break, and we'll be right back.
This is Dark Matter News. I'm Joshua Stark. Scientists say cocaine pollution in rivers and lakes may be altering the behavior of wild salmon. A new study published in the journal Current Biology found that young Atlantic salmon exposed to trace amounts of cocaine and its chemical byproducts become far more active and traveled much greater distances than normal fish. Researchers from Sweden and Australia tracked more than 100 salmon in Sweden's Lake Vättern over an 8-week period. Some fish were exposed to environmentally realistic levels of cocaine, while others were exposed to benzoyl-ligonine, the primary chemical left behind after the human body metabolizes cocaine. The findings surprised scientists. Salmon exposed to the substances swam nearly twice as far each week compared to unaffected fish. Fish exposed to the cocaine byproduct traveled the farthest, dispersing more than 30 kilometers from where they were released. Scientists say wastewater treatment plants are not equipped to completely remove many pharmaceutical and illegal drug compounds from sewage. As a result, traces of these chemicals are entering rivers, lakes, and coastal waters around the world. Researchers warn that changes in salmon behavior could have serious ecological consequences. Increased roaming may affect migration patterns, feeding habits, predator avoidance, and reproduction, potentially disrupting fragile aquatic ecosystems. Catch up with us at darkmatternews.com.
The Bible describes men's thoughts in the last days as deeply corrupted, selfish, and rebellious against God, marked by perilous times. In reverse speech, the fulfillment of prophecy, David John Oates goes beyond psychology and linguistics to ask a deeper question. Did Scripture anticipate a time when hidden words would be revealed? Drawing from the Bible, the Gospels, Revelation, and ancient spiritual traditions, this book examines recurring themes long overlooked. The voice of the heart, words that testify against us, secrets proclaimed from the housetops, sealed books opened at the appointed time, and the two-edged sword that proceeds from the mouth. David Oates argues that these are not merely poetic metaphors, but descriptions of a revelatory process now made visible through modern technology. Reverse Speech, Fulfillment of Prophecy, now available at Amazon.com. Get your copy today.
NASA is preparing for one of the biggest shakeups in the agency's modern history. Officials have unveiled a sweeping reorganization plan aimed at streamlining operations, cutting costs, and reshaping how NASA handles space missions, human spaceflight, and future exploration programs. The restructuring comes as the agency faces new mounting budget pressure and growing concern over rising mission costs. Under the new plan, several divisions are expected to be consolidated and management layers reduced, and some long-running programs reevaluated or scaled back. NASA leaders say the changes are designed to make the agency more efficient and better positioned for future missions to the Moon and Mars. This is Dark Matter News. NASA's Artemis II astronauts are being praised for keeping their composure after a confrontation with a moon landing conspiracy theorist on Capitol Hill. During the encounter, a man shouted accusations that the crew never went to space and claimed the mission was fake. Instead of reacting angrily, the astronauts calmly walked away, with pilot Victor Glover offering a polite wave and simply saying, "Take care." The moment immediately drew comparisons to a famous incident involving Apollo 11 astronaut Buzz Aldrin back in 2002. Aldrin was confronted by conspiracy theorist Bart Sibrel, who aggressively accused him of lying about walking on the moon. After repeated harassment and insults, the then 72-year-old astronaut punched Sibrel in the face. No charges were ever filed. The Artemis II mission marked humanity's first crewed journey beyond Earth orbit since Apollo 17 in 1972. The mission's flight around the moon was live-streamed and heavily documented, but conspiracy theories surrounding space travel continue to spread online despite decades of scientific evidence supporting both the Apollo and Artemis programs. NASA supporters say the astronauts' calm response shows how the agency is handling public scrutiny differently in a new era of lunar exploration. With future Artemis missions expected to land astronauts on the moon later this decade, NASA hopes to keep public focus on science, exploration, and the long-term goal of sending humans to Mars. Catch up with Dark Matter News on Facebook and darkmatternews.com. From Memphis, Tennessee, I'm Joshua Stark.
Coming to you at the speed of light in the darkness. This is Midnight Frequency Radio with Carl Richardson. Now, here's Carl.
Welcome back to the show.
Thank you for having us.
And yes, of course, for having me too.
Like I was saying, I have a copy of the recording, and I'd like to play it for the listeners and hope it plays right, because you know how this stuff goes. It works in rehearsal, but never on the real show. So yeah, let me try it out here.
Once again, please.
Yes, I will. Hold on.
Okay, here it comes. Oh my God, that's awful.
All right. I hope that played. I've got a
It did, but the volume was like 0.
So for us, probably it's probably louder for them.
Okay.
Yeah, I didn't have it run through the studio monitor for feedback reasons. So
Anyway, it's extremely unnerving, this sound that it made. It
now,
finally quit making the sound, but
and like Art said on his show, God, that's awful. So,
yeah, yeah.
did you do any DNA analysis on the alien or at any point?
Yes. While I assumed he was dead, and I was taking him in and out of the freezer to show our colleagues and friends and family members, I decided that I would go ahead, since there was a gaping wound in his head, that I would extract some tissue and some blood samples and go ahead and take it and have it analyzed. And I had access to one of the best pathologists in the country, who was somebody I had had lunch with several times, who worked in the same building that I did at the University Medical Center. So I made a phone call to him and I said, I have some tissue and blood samples that I would like to have you analyze. Would that be possible? He said, sure. He said, it'll take about a week. Now you have to remember, this was in 1996. This was before they had chromosome testing in computers. So all of this had to be done by hand. So they took the samples, I took them to him. I had stored them in a freezer, keeping them as sterile and as content as possible without disturbing the properties of the science. I took them to him. He took them to his lab. And it took about a week. And he called me up and he said, Jonathan, would you come into my office, please? We need to talk. And I said, sure. And so I went in and talked. He said, what is this? Where did you get this material? And I said, well, I got it in the woods, in the forest. And I didn't tell him that I had the body. I didn't tell him what it was or what I thought it was. I wanted him to tell me what his analysis would come up with. And he said, look, I'm going to tell you something. None of this makes sense to me. He says, because we did a chromosome study on it, and it came up with 46 chromosomes, exactly like humans have. But 9 of the pair were different, were absolutely not human. And he said the closest reference we could come up with in looking at all of the database that we have in the United States, the closest reference was sea tortoise and dolphin that were part of these 9 pair. He said some of the blood analysis was so different. There was no, it was nucleated blood cells, and the white cells were extremely different. There was a high concentration of copper in the blood, which is not characteristic of any other creature that we could find. And he said it's a totally different structure, different matrix structure. He had done the analysis. He kicked out all of the well, let's just say the statistics on paper of their analysis. And their only findings that they could come up with, that it was a completely new species that they'd never seen before, that there was no reference to ever before. And he said, Jonathan, he said, I'm going to publish this because it's an important find. But he said, again, I'm going to ask you, where did you come up with these samples? Because it's like no other that he'd ever seen. And he said, you can't manufacture this. You can't mix the blood or mix the tissue samples to assume you're going to create something new. It doesn't work like that. And in those days, we didn't have CRISPR, or we didn't have any of the scientific ability to get into the DNA and into the chromosome structure. We didn't have that in 1996. And I said, well, I found this in the forest. It was part of a creature that I had come across. And he said, well, it's like nothing that I've ever seen before. And he said, you have to let me publish this. And so I said, yes, absolutely, you may publish this. And he was an accredited pathologist. I mean, actually world famous. Dr. Roger Haggett was his name. And 3 days after, actually 2 days after he had shown me this material, I got a call from his secretary who informed me that somebody had come into their office where Roger's office was on a different floor from where I worked, same building, come in and killed Roger, shot him in the head, and then killed himself.
Oh my God.
And then,
and that's not the only person, as you'll get to later, that were affected by this case, unfortunately.
well, and then the secretary said, and then within 10 minutes of after this event had happened, he said all these military like police came in and confiscated his computer, all his files, his physical paper files, and everything he had. In fact, they had even gone to his house and confiscated things of his and his wife's, taking all evidence there was that he ever had these samples. Now, there were other people involved, and other people were also murdered. And I'm using the term murdered to restrict the ability to have knowledge to expose this information. Other technicians were killed.
My listener said that audio didn't come through. I'm going to replay it. I've set it up in a different format.
Okay.
And I'll play it again.
But anyway, this was a perfect example of how government, and I use that term loosely, how dark agents tried to cover all of this up immediately by even murdering suspects. And this is not an illusion. This is not a hoax. You can look these people up, in records and see that Dr. Roger Haggett was killed in his office.
The government knows no bounds on what they'll do. And
for 30 years, I've been dealing with this, with all of the negativity, all of the propaganda, the saturation of negative information.
Your own assassination attempts, don't forget that. That's a huge one.
Right. I mean, even, a couple of weeks ago, I was shot at again while we were getting out of a car where I happened to be staying. And I mean, this is reality. This is my reality. Do I think they want to kill me? I can't believe that, because that would make me a martyr. I think they want to silence me. I think they want to scare me, and which is the constant process of doing everything they can do to manufacture events and circumstances to get me to stop talking. Look, I'm not trying to convince anybody of anything. I'm trying to tell you what happened to me, trying to explain the circumstances and the events that happened around my life and my situation with this creature, who later on revived, came back, and I have since created a relationship with it. I know, as strange as that sounds, it was presented to me. It was an opportunity. And I felt like it was necessary to understand what was going on with this creature. and with our lives. Why are we being visited? Why is this a negative? Why does government restrict information from us? It just doesn't make sense to me. It's science, if nothing else. And I've tried my best to give away all the evidence to show what's happened, what continues to happen, and that I've been in communication for 30 years and have developed a database of information of the life of this being that I call Freddy. And I believe there's a lot to be learned here. I believe that humans have made a lot of mistakes that we can correct, that we can actually gain from this experience. They are probably 1 million years advanced from us. He is a hybrid human. He is basically a biological created being that was born in our atmosphere on planet Earth to work within our atmosphere and our environment so that he could survive the biology and the resistance. I mean, we've spent millions of years growing through this, learning to survive all of the bacteria that lives and breathes in our atmosphere. They haven't. So the only way they could do that was to have a hybrid that was designed to live and work in this environment. And that's what he is.
All right, let me replay this audio, and then there's some other items we need to go into. Hold on just a sec.
Sure.
Once again, please.
Yes, I will. Hold on.
Okay, here it comes. Oh my God, that's awful.
Okay, it came through that time, I'm pretty sure.
Okay.
But it,
I could hear Art.
yeah.
Yeah, the earlier time it was more muffled, but I knew I could still hear it lower though.
Yeah.
All the original radio interviews that I did that were initially Art Bell are still available. You can still hear them. And you can tell, that my life was in turmoil at this time. I mean, Dr. J, you understand that.
Yeah. Since I was there to help you when the filmmakers came, there's an incident that took place when we were filming Contact in the Woods, and where I had been staying, you had come to visit me, and when you left a few hours later, there happened to be pliers under your car, almost as if someone was either cutting the brakes or letting us know that you are being followed. Not to mention, you were followed on the way to see me one day.
Yeah, it's a continual process of harassment. And I believe it's intimidation. And that's what they
all it
want
is.
to do the most. But I have to say, and this is the truth, in 30 years, there's been 14 people who I consider teammates and family members who have one way or another, their life was ended because of these circumstances. Some of them directly murdered, some of them run off the road, some of them shot. I mean, there's no other conclusion. It's on the record. These people were alive and well and gave a great part of their life to help me, just to help me survive. And this can't be, covered over. It's a reality. It's a reality I have to live with every day of my life since it's happened.
Speaking of the people who were killed on your team, I think now would be a good time, Jonathan, to mention, because this is really important, who else was on the team? Because there was a crack group of people that were on this team. I mean, within ufology, it had every legend you can imagine. So I think we should talk about that.
Well, when I first came out and went public, I was invited to go to Laughlin, Nevada for the International UFO Congress, where I was introduced to some of the greatest researchers and people in the world, in the community. People I'd never known prior to this, but who I got to know very well during this time. They all said as a group that they wanted research done on my case called textbook research, where they could document all of these issues and all the items that happened. So they set out, these people, and I'll name them: Wendell Stevens, Colonel Wendell Stevens, Donald Ware, Bob Dean, Robert O'Dean, and Dan McAvoy Sr. and Jaime Maussan all jointly said that they would create a textbook case of my, that they could study, that they could find the evidence, that they could talk to people who were involved. And after finding out that all of my records were destroyed, all of my credentials were destroyed, saying that I never went to any university, that I never graduated, that I never was taught and was part of this medical school, University of Washington Medical School, and the medical facility, all of that was erased as if I never existed. And these people set out to prove that I did exist, that I did go to these colleges, these universities, and find people who knew me and realized and recognized that I was there going to school, working in this facility, and that I was a physician actively working at the time. And it took 2 years for Dan McAvoy Sr. to walk in my shoes, literally behind me everywhere I went. The United States, South America, Mexico, Japan, where I had the Link artifact analyzed by metallurgists who basically said that it is a physical, biological interface between biology and mechanics, that it was some kind of an active device that was interpowered, that had a pulse of radiation every 7 seconds, that they couldn't identify, that it's made of multiple layers of metal and fiber, like a plant leaf fiber, that literally had veins of active memory inside of itself, that it is some kind of a controller and or a communication device. And later we found out that it has other properties, that it's literally a teletransport device that is workable, that is active, where I actually produced a video on camera in a television studio with other people, with other people witnessing it. 200 people was witnessing what happened. And of course, all this has been denounced and stated that it was fake, and I challenge anybody, okay, if it's fake, make one, do it, make a film that has this ability where you use no special effects, none.
Can I say something about that real quick, Jonathan?
Yes,
for everybody, about the analysis of the film, I found the best one to be, if people are a fan of the Y-Files, one of the biggest channels on UFOs right now. The guy's a big skeptic, and how he ends up a lot of times on cases, even I believe, is either in the middle or he doesn't believe it. But when he covered Jonathan's case, which was titled Alien in the Freezer, and it was one of the 3 segments of Art's Campfire Stories, he said this case happened, and without a shadow of a doubt, and most importantly, a doctor in 1996, without the resources of a major Hollywood studios, like Universal or Warner Brothers would have had to make such a doll to look alive. The way it was glistening in its eyes, the way it was breathing asymmetrically. I highly suggest anyone check that out when this is over, because what Jonathan is saying, without special effects, it's beyond that. Even a Hollywood studio in that era would have a hard time making a doll to breathe in such a way.
Well,
Even if they put a motor in there, it just wouldn't be symmetric.
Even in a video, you could see its eyes blink.
That's right.
And its facial muscles contort.
Yes.
People have to realize that this is a process, an ongoing process that I had to go through. This wasn't all done overnight. This was done over a period of years. But even the years that it was done over, there was not an availability of computer special effects at that time. The only one doing computer special effects was Spielberg and George Lucas. And I didn't know any of those people. I didn't know anybody from Hollywood or anything. And I was lucky to be able to do my own email at the time. You know, I'm so computer illiterate. But the facts remain is there's so much evidence that goes along with this. In other words, if it didn't happen, how did I get the video? If the video is fake, how did I get the DNA and the chromosome study? If that wasn't enough, do you think I killed the guy who did the chromosome study, the guy that died? I mean, it's on and on and on. And I have proof that I wasn't even anywhere near this place when this doctor was killed and these other people.
And if this was fake, would you have an extraterrestrial artifact where the metal has been analyzed and shows metals not from this earth, unidentifiable, and the ones that are cannot even be made in the combinations they are or the purities they are in earth or even on gravity?
Exactly. I mean, there is a abundance of physical evidence. And people say, oh, well, the photographs aren't physical evidence. Yes, they are. They were made on film. They were not made out of digital technology.
And they've been analyzed.
So it is physical evidence. And they've been analyzed by true professionals that I have no control over what they say. Jaime Maussan, who took me to Mexico, who did this television interview with me, which is the first place ever in history to show an artifact that was made off of this earth, not of human beings. I mean, there's all kinds of information behind the scenes that happened where people tried to hurt us, steal us. He hired the Presidential Guard to take care of my team that went to Mexico City. We had the entire top floor of the Fiesta Americana Hotel sanctioned off for us with the guards who literally were in all the rooms next to us, who protected us. We went, after we did this program, we went out into the public where they celebrated that we were there, that we did this, that we exposed this information and gave it to the people of the world by showing them everything we had. I mean, this had never been done before, ever. And this was in 2000. And no interview had ever been done like this. Jaime's team, Jaime Maussan from Mexico, the journalist, flew to Seattle with a team of experts. I took them to the exact site in the forest where they took samples of the trees and the dirt and the ground and the foliage and all took it back and did forensic examination, showing that something had happened in this site in the 300-foot circle.
Can I add something in that happened at the site? When you were
Yes.
filming your documentary and your partner showed me where this incident happened after, of course, you pointed it out, and I brought a compass there, the exact location where the obelisk was floating or off anchored into the air, and where the body of Freddie was, the compass was going crazy,
Magnetic.
spinning
It just
wildly
spins.
and glitching. Yep.
Right. Well, the area that this is in, and all this I've learned after the fact by people who are geologists, and basically Freddie was a geologist, the alien. This area is in huge amounts of granite and ferrite from the mountain. This is in the mountains. This isn't in a valley, down below. This is actually up into the mountains at, 4,000 feet above sea level. And all of this iron ferrite and granite and has huge amounts of crystal in it and causes a huge amount of magnetic distortion. So that's one of the reasons that the compass just basically spins out of control. But I didn't know any of that prior to this. I mean, who does? Who knows that kind of thing? Who understands? And why would they be studying this geology? Well, the Earth is a ongoing living thing. It is changing all the time, and they are concerned about the geology of the planet. And this is one of the duties and why he was in the mountains. The black thing that I call the obelisk, some people say, oh, it was a ship. And I've never professed that it was a ship. I always said, well, maybe it's a toolbox. Maybe it's, somebody else said, well, maybe it's a doorway between different dimensions. Maybe that gave them access, because it didn't move the entire time I was there. It couldn't be moved. I mean, I'm 200 plus pounds and I got on top of it, and you couldn't move it a fraction of an inch. It was like it was glued, anchored to the air. And physicists say that if we had the ability to go from one dimension to another, there would be a portal, there would be an access point that you would enter to change dimensions. Some people believe that's what this is. It was a representation of a doorway from one dimension to another. Now, all I know, it was there. It felt like it realized I was there. And at one point, I felt that low ebbing harmonic tone was looking for the alien, who at the time was unconscious. I thought dead, but it was unconscious, and it couldn't find him. And so it found me moving around, and for a second, and maybe a half a second, it may have actually absorbed me and then thrown me back out, realizing that I wasn't the alien that he was supposed to be taking care of. I don't know.
Well, the people that are
But
interested in this story, I would like to go into the documentary Contact in the Woods, the Dr. Jonathan Reed story. If you'd like to
it's a brand new documentary. People had been after me for 3 or 4 years trying to say this should be done, this should be understood and investigated, that my life should be understood better. And they decided how to do this. This was not my design. I didn't come up with the concept. People from the film industry, from documentary industry, had come to me and said, we want to do this. Will you allow us to do this? And I finally, after turning them down for years, I finally agreed to it, as long as they would be respectful toward my friends, my family, and the circumstances in which I have to exist. And they agreed to that.
Dr.
So this documentary should be coming out about in June at some time.
June 19th.
There may be a trailer that is presented ahead of time about this documentary. It's called Contact in the Woods, the Dr. Jonathan Reed story. It's well done. I told them after I saw it that the only thing they needed was better talent. But that's I'm the talent that they chose. But it's very different. It's not a normal documentary. I consider it to be part one because I think there will be additional parts to it where we will, show more of the evidence, talk more about the other people involved. But this was a design to basically show people that I was still alive, how this had affected me. I'm not a young man anymore, and after 30 years of dealing with this, the negative propaganda, the issue of dealing with an extraterrestrial that visits me unannounced a lot of times, it has left its mark on my life, on my personality. And I have to apologize that in some ways it's crippled me, because I wish I could be more forthright, more outgoing. But all I can do is tell the story of what has happened to me, the truth about what it has done, how it has affected me in my life. In some ways, I hope that it helps other people that have dealt with similar circumstances, because it's traumatic. It's mind-blowing. I understand why some people can't handle it at all and have chosen, other avenues to not deal with it. I must say that I've learned a great deal, and I hope that it has helped other people too. I hope that it will, by exposing myself in this way. Look, I didn't choose to do this in my life. I was real happy before any of this happened to me. I loved my dog, and I miss her terribly. She was like a child to me. And to see her killed in front of my eyes was the most terrible thing I could ever imagine. But I must say,
I could only imagine
is that Robert, my co-author of the book that we wrote, that is still available, he told me something once, and it made an impression. Right after we gave a lecture in Laughlin, Nevada at the International UFO Congress, it was where we were supposed to speak for about 45 minutes to an hour. I ended up speaking for 3 hours nonstop, showing all the photographs, showing the videos, both in the woods and at home, what I call an analysis video of where I unwrap the body at home, where people can see that he was moving and blinking at the time that I didn't realize. I showed all of that, and people were captivated. People were glued to their seats and didn't want to leave. Normally, it's a 400 people audience. We had 890 people standing in the aisles and watching this. They had never had a bigger lecture of attendance ever. A woman afterwards, we left the auditorium, my team and I and security, we left there and we went to get something to eat in the hotel. And as we were going and we went in and sat down, the maitre d' came back and talked to Robert and asked him if he would come out because he had an issue. Robert left. Robert came back and said, Jonathan, there's a woman here waiting to talk to you with her daughter. And I said, okay. And so I took security, and there she was standing in the entrance of this restaurant. And I introduced myself, and I said, hello. And she said, hello, and introduced me to her little daughter, who was like 7. And she said, I'm sorry to bother you, but I want you to know something. She said, I want you to know that we came here today specifically to hear you. We had heard you on the radio with Art Bell. We had listened to every word you ever said. And she said, I came here today because I didn't believe it was real. She said, I really didn't believe that what you had experienced was real, or that you were even real. And she says, because I planned to go home and kill myself and my daughter, because we can't deal with this insanity, because it's happened to us too, that they had been visited by extraterrestrials several times, and that it had driven her literally out of her mind. And she said, after listening to you, after seeing what you brought forth and listening to your testimony, she said, you made me believe that it's important enough to be able to tell other people that this happened, that we weren't crazy, that I'm not out of my mind, insane, and that I should live for my daughter's sake and be able to tell this story. And she said, thank you for giving us this hope, this ability to rationalize something that has been so irrational that it obviously had changed everybody's life who was part of this, the witnessing of this. But she said, thank you, you've saved our life. That woman and her daughter contacts me every year just before Christmas, and I always get a card from them. And the little girl at the time was like 7 years old. And now, 30 years later, she's an adult, but she still contacts me. She still tells me how important it was that her and her mother got to see me in person and listen to this testimony, which she said made them understand that life is important and that these issues need to be realized and understood. And she said, you saved our life. So when people say, why did you do this? That's the best example I can give you of why this is important, that I tell people that are willing to listen to what happened to me. That's the best example I can give you that says why I continue to do this. And what else can I do? They took away my ability to work. They took away my licensing to be able to work as a physician. I can't get it back. I've tried for years to get retested in other states and even in other countries. But this is the fact of the dark government suppression that carries on even to this day. So I say to everybody who has an experience, be careful how you deal with it. Be careful who you trust afterwards. And I'm here for you to contact. You can always contact me. There's always sources. I'm on Facebook. As old as it is, I'm available. And I have continued to be available for people who needed to talk, because I understand that. I understand that it's necessary to be able to confide in someone else that maybe has a similar understanding of what they're going through. So that's what I've dedicated my life to, because I have had no other opportunity to do anything else. So that's what I continue to do.
Well, Dr. Reed, I appreciate you relating your experience with us, and I, for one, believe it. and I have no reason to doubt it. And Dr. J, did you have anything you'd like to add?
No, the only thing I could say is, you can basically get the overview of this case in an hour and a half or two, or even compress it to an hour. But remember, this case was investigated for years. I have 3 interviews spanning about 9 hours with Jonathan, and we're still going to do more because it's not enough. And there's also dozens, if not hundreds of hours over the years I still talked about this case. So there's going to be more to come. But there's a lot already out there that I suggest people check out the 3 that I did, because I also play all the content there, the videos, pictures. Some pictures I couldn't show, for instance, of Jonathan being shot. He has been shot. When he said assassination attempts, literally in the car, his driver was killed and he was hit himself. I mean, graphic enough where I couldn't even show him on YouTube.
He wasn't playing. It actually happened.
3 times. 3 times I've been shot physically and run off the road numerous times, and things I haven't talked about. I was taken, beat up, thrown in a van, and basically kidnapped for 3 days and tortured in ways that I can't identify because it's too graphic. But if people think that this is that I'm just some guy on the weekends creating a little story, they're wrong. They're wrong. I mean, this is my life. This is the only thing I have to live with and for. It's ongoing. It's not just something that happened in 1996. It continues to happen all the time. I mean, Freddie was here 4 days ago. He morphed into my house where other people have seen him, the house that I was staying in. He's followed me around the world. And like we've said, there's been numerous other people who have witnessed this. And where Freddie has shown up in front of them in their house or their business thousands of miles away from me. So it isn't me projecting something out of my, collar or sleeve. It's a reality that we can't escape. But people have to understand, the audience needs to understand, this could happen to any one of you. And you would be left with the same feelings that I have of what do I do? Who do I talk to? Who can I trust? Do I speak to anybody about this? Because it's unnerving. It's even unnerving to me after 30 years. It's not natural to have some little gray, blue creature or alien morph into your life and talk to you with telepathy for 45 minutes and then morph out of your reality. It's just not normal, but it is part of my life.
Dr. Reed, I'd really like to have you back because there's more to this story. There's when your house was invaded and ransacked.
Yes.
And but
I would love to tell more, and I would love to tell your audience how much I appreciate them listening and trying to understand, trying to put their self in my position to better understand what this has been like for me and for other people. It's an ongoing story. It's not just about me, but it's about all of us making changes in our lives. I mean, even if you look at the local news nowadays, you're getting saturated with what they're calling, disclosure. I call it drip, drip, drip.
That's exactly what it is.
Because it's so controlled. They're not showing what I can show you. I mean, I can show you the living being itself, both on video and in photographs. They're showing lights in the sky and, a light ball flying over the water. And those are all important things. Don't get me wrong. Those are all things we can identify and possibly we've seen. Many of them have seen lights in the sky. But I know what the public wants to know is who's driving these ships, what's inside of them, where they come from, And I know a lot of that detail. I mean, after 30 years of having communication, I've asked all those questions. Where are you from? Why are you here? What are you doing? How is this going to affect humanity? I have asked all those questions, and we can go through that on another presentation. But I just want to say, Carl and Dr. J, thank you so much for this opportunity and for letting me share my life with you and your audience. All I can say is God bless us all, and please take care of each other, because in this day and age, that's all we have left is each other. Thank you.
Well, thank you. It's been an honor having you. And Dr. J, it's been an honor having you on the show.
Thank you.
And we look forward to doing this more in the future. Like I say, there's more to the story, and I know you were limited to a certain amount of time tonight. I'm sure it's late where you're at, and so we'll have you back. That's for sure.
It's been an honor for me. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you. Y'all have a good evening.
I was hoping to plug in my channel.
Go ahead.
Oh, okay. Well, I hope everyone checks out on YouTube, Dr. J Radio Live, DRJ Radio Live, not just the Jonathan Reed interviews. There's about 600 interviews of any ufologist you can imagine, and then some.
All right. Dr. Reed has launched a new website, and I have the link on my midnightfrequency.net page. That's all one word. You can go there and click it. It's still a work in progress. There's a lot of photos that have to be added and some more information and video links and everything else. So feel free to go to midnightfrequency.net, click on the link, and the site, like I say, over the next few days, I'll get more things posted to it.
And June 19th, Contact in the Woods, and you'll be able to see the trailer soon on the website that Carl made. And not to mention, there'll be a link to the movie itself on June 19th as well on the website.
And I got to pre-screen the movie, and let me tell you something, it's a must-watch. It covers all this and has the video footage of the link, dimensional shift, and alien footage that was recorded. I know some of it's been cleaned up with AI, but it hasn't been altered. So good night, everybody, and we'll see you next week on Midnight Frequency Radio.
Join host Carl Richardson as he interviews top guests in various fields of study. Now airing live every Saturday night from 9 to 11 Central Time and 10 p.m. to midnight Eastern.
As the hour grows late and the signal begins to fade into the static, we're left with more than just a story tonight. We're left with questions about what walks in the spaces just beyond our understanding, about what may be watching, waiting, or even interacting with us in ways we barely comprehend. Dr. Jonathan Reed's account sits at the crossroads of belief and understanding, where evidence and mystery collide. Was it real? Was it misinterpreted? Or does it represent something far stranger than either explanation allows? Out here in the quiet places, in the forest, the deserts, even in spaces between our own thoughts, there are things we don't fully understand, and maybe we're not meant to. But that won't stop us from asking. Next time on Midnight Frequency Radio, we shift from beings of flesh to entities of shadows. Our guest will be Rob Shelsky, researcher and author, joining us to explore one of the most chilling and widely reported paranormal phenomenon of modern times, shadow people. Dark figures seen out of the corner of your eye, standing at the foot of your bed, watching from doorways, or moving just beyond the reach of light. Are they hallucinations, interdimensional visitors, something tied to consciousness itself, or something else entirely? We'll dig into eyewitness accounts, theories, and the unsettling patterns that connect them. Until next time, keep your mind open, keep your eyes sharp, and remember, not everything in the dark is hiding. Some of it is watching. For the late Art Bell, Joshua Stark, Josh Cheers, and Lady Rosemary, I'm Carl Richardson, and this has been Midnight Frequency Radio. We're reminding you to continue to explore the unknown.